With me on the comfy couch is somebody who I don't get to see enough of because she and I could talk forever about history. We're talking about Elizabeth Korsmo. You are the curator at Tacoma Historical Society, and we're going to talk about the Tacoma Cemetery Tour. Welcome back.
Thank you very much for having me.
It's great to have you. And I have to say, in the green room, you had a mask on, and would you tell me why you were wearing the mask?
Because I haven't gotten sick for 5 years, and I'd really like to keep that straight.
That is unbelievable. I just had to highlight that. Wow. Okay, so we're going to do everything we can to keep you healthy and get you back in the green room to put that mask back on. So if people do not know what the Tacoma Cemetery Tour is, because I love cemeteries, how do we answer that mysterious question?
So, as the name suggests, the Tacoma Cemetery Tour is in fact a tour of Tacoma Cemetery.
Yes.
You might call it Old Tacoma Cemetery, since we also have New Tacoma Cemetery.
That's right.
So it's going to be a select tour. You aren't traipsing through every acre of the plot, but we'll be having docents stationed throughout the cemetery, and we'll be going on a guided tour to meet some of the more interesting and famous residents of the cemetery.
I love that. So when was the last time we had this tour?
2019 was the last live tour. We were able to do a video tour 1 year during the pandemic, but this is the first year since 2019 that we're actually back with the full tour in person in the cemetery.
I love that. So these are people that are no longer with us, that are part of, were showcased in the last tour we had. Is that correct?
Yes.
Tell us who we're going to meet in this tour.
So in the 2025 tour, we're going to be meeting some very interesting early folks from Tacoma, such as Rebecca Staley, estranged wife of Job Carr. We'll speak a little bit about her family's role in the founding of the city. We're going to meet several figures involved in the early history of the cemetery itself, including the man who did the original survey work to lay it out, the first secretary of the cemetery board, who was responsible for a lot of the early organization, as well as people who had early experiences of burying loved ones in the cemetery, or were simply early witnesses to the history of Tacoma itself. Wow.
Okay, so you probably had the inevitable position of picking, because the look on your face, I hope we caught that on camera, because that was just, it was like, oh my God, there's so many people in history. How do I narrow it down? How do you narrow it down?
So we tried to pick a theme.
Okay.
And then we have a number of interesting constraints because we're also trying to keep this a walkable tour.
Okay.
So we can't be zigzagging on opposite sides of the plot. So it's the fun game of trying to find a number of people that we can find enough information on to actually do them justice on the tour, that are buried in the cemetery, that are hopefully within walking distance of each other, but not like right next to each other, so we don't want the stations overlapping. And then we also tried to have them stick to a theme. So 1 year there was a theme about the Great War, and so people who were involved somehow in World War I. There have been themes about sports, about artists. And this year, our theme is actually the cemetery itself, which is, like the city, celebrating its 150th anniversary this year.
I love that. So give us some nuts and bolts. Put the GoPro on the head. When is the tour?
So the tour is going to be Saturday and Sunday, July 12th and 13th.
Okay.
And it's going to be in the evening. So our first tour starts at 5, and they're scheduled on the half hour until 8 p.m. So the final tour of the day will be just as the sun's starting to set over the cemetery.
Okay. All right. And how do we need tickets? How do we sign up?
It is a ticketed event, and I'm not sure there's very many left. It's been quite popular this year. But if you go to our website at tacomahistory.org, that'll have a link to upcoming events and a place you can buy tickets.
I love that. So just like the people that we are celebrating and getting to know, there are many people in their family. There are many partnerships and collaborations they had in their life. And I think life imitates art. So what partnerships and collaborations do you have for this event?
So this Tacoma Cemetery Tour is our collaboration between the Tacoma Historical Society, the Tacoma Cemetery Association, and this year we have Pretty Gritty Tours helping us out as well.
Yes!
And then we also, the Tacoma Historical Society has support from Tacoma Creates. So our Tacoma Creates grant is going to be helping fund some of our activities with the cemetery tours.
I love that. Okay, now you cannot answer this like you are a mom being asked which child is your favorite, just to preface that. But if you had to pick one that is on this tour that you are the most interested to getting to know, who would it be?
Okay, reenactors, do not listen into this. I'm not playing favorites with you. Probably the most interesting one, I think, was Grace Hoska.
Why?
Mostly because I was able to piece together so many little bits of information about her. There's other characters where there's just these blanks I just was unable to penetrate, and she kept popping up in the unlikeliest places. So I was able to find newspaper accounts. I was able to figure out what she was getting paid as an 18-year-old school teacher back in Illinois.
Oh my gosh!
Which was a level of detail I just never expected to find. She was showing up in the society pages, so I have a pretty good idea of when she met her husband. And it was just a level of granularity that I often don't get to see when I'm doing historic research into people who've been dead for over a century.
I was going to say, tell me there's a database you go to where, or some kind of genealogy site that will help those graves speak.
You know, find a grave's important for just figuring out who's closest enough to each other to get started. Ancestry is often a really helpful place to start for trying to piece together relationships and, you know, poking into the censuses to see who's living where and with whom in different years, so you can sort of follow family changes. Newspaper databases are really helpful for being able to search by names. Our own museum database, sometimes we'll get lucky and have artifacts. In Grace's case, and probably one of the reasons I'm really partial to her, is we actually have a portrait of her that was painted in 1877.
All the more reason.
And she's got this wonderful short curly haircut, and there's a family story about how she decided to start wearing her hair short decades before it became popular, and you will learn more about that when you meet Grace at Tacoma Cemetery.
I love this. You've mentioned the partnerships. Also, there's got to be volunteers and just a sheer amount of research. Who would you like to thank?
So many people. I'd like to thank all of our volunteer reenactors. We have about a dozen docents who are going to be helping out and guiding people through it, and of course all my colleagues at THS.
I love that. So we get one shot to walk through this cemetery. Well, we get one day to walk through the cemetery, many chances for the tour. And can people come dressed in costumes?
You can. You are going to be walking around the cemetery. It's about a mile, so I'd recommend comfortable shoes and to dress for the weather. It was very hot on our rehearsal day.
Okay, I love that. Thank you so much for being here and for resurrecting this and reenacting this, because if we don't know our history, we are doomed to repeat it. So Elizabeth, as always, you are exceptional. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure. When we come back, Michael Lang and I will be hanging out over in the corner talking about happy farms. You don't want to miss that. We'll be right back.